There was a wedding at Cana in Galilee, the first line of today's gospel. I have an Italian friend, and on the first time he ever came to Britain, he experienced some culture shock. He was in a small village, and he saw in the church that there was a wedding going on. So he did what Italians would do. He went along. If there was a wedding going on, then everybody was free to turn up and take part. This was a common celebration for everyone. So he went, and then people said, "Well, who are you? And what are you doing here? Have you received an invitation?" Well, no, I haven't. Well, then if you wouldn't mind going away. Well, there we are. That's not to our credit. I think God, in this matter at least, is an Italian. And this is the wedding, this wedding of Cana. It was a real wedding, but as always in the Gospel of John, there are deeper meanings. This is God's wedding, which is open to all. Jesus and his disciples had also been invited, it says. Well, yes, but that was because they were not from the village. But everybody in the village of Cana would have, without a second thought, taken part in this wedding, which would have gone on for more than a day. And this wedding comes at the beginning of the Gospel of John. It comes at the beginning of what we call ordinary time, green time. It's the first of the signs, says St. John, that Jesus worked. It's a sign of what God's first will for us is. We're reminded, under the imagery of a wedding, of his eternal plan, of his constant will. He doesn't want us to be forsaken and abandoned. He doesn't want us to be unconnected or unbelonging. He wants to bond with us, make a covenant with us, share his life with us. Let us say, marry us. No longer, says Isaiah, are you to be named forsaken or your land abandoned, but you shall be called my delight and your land the wedded. For the Lord takes delight in you, and your land will have its wedding. Like a young man marrying a virgin, so will the one who built you wed you. And as the bridegroom rejoices in his bride, so will your God rejoice in you. And so the Gospel of John, which is the Gospel of the Incarnation, the Gospel of the Eucharist, begins with a wedding, begins with abundant, overflowing, top quality wine. And in a sense, we could say the whole Bible begins with a wedding. In Genesis chapter 2, this at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. Therefore a man leaves his father and mother and cleaves to his wife, and they become one flesh. And if the Bible begins with a wedding, well, it ends with a wedding. For the marriage of the Lamb has come, says the book of Revelation, and his bride has made herself ready. Blessed are those who are invited to the marriage feast of the Lamb. Come, and I will show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb. And so Revelation reveals the meaning of Genesis. The end reveals the meaning of the beginning. And this wedding is the new wine. It is the best wine kept till last. And all are invited. Now this week we are praying in a special way for Christian unity. We want the scattering of Christians to be overcome. We want surely the lapsed to return, and we want unbelievers to be drawn to faith. God is an Italian. This wedding is for everyone. That's one thing. Now there's a second line, follows straight on. The mother of Jesus was there. That's a slight surprise in a way. Now, she always makes us think, Mary, of the church as God sees her. And the church, after becoming a bride, becomes a mother, God's helpmate in the work of salvation. Now, this cathedral church, any cathedral church, is called the mother church of the diocese. And perhaps we could say that within all the churches of the diocese, the cathedral church and the cathedral parish have a special vocation to make sure that the good wine is here and flowing in abundance. And to be practical, to invite people to the wedding. I heard just the other day, this is in connection with the priesthood. You ask many people who are priests, well, why did you become a priest? Because 90% the answers are because a priest said to me, have you thought of becoming a priest? 90% of cases. You then ask how many priests have put that question to a young man. Well, 90% have not. So we might have more priests if we had more invitations. We might have more Christians. We might have more Catholics if we issued invitations. Now, Mother Church has a method, a process, as it were, for giving birth to children, for carrying them, conceiving them, carrying them, giving them birth. Over the centuries, hasn't always been followed, can't always be followed perfectly in every individual case because life is messy, as we know. But still, there is a sequence of stages and steps. First of all, people need to get to know other Christians and to hear the basic message of the gospel, the kerygma as it's called. Begin to know Christ, begin to know God, begin to turn from what's out of kilter in their lives. And then at some stage, we had it actually on the first Sunday of Advent here, they become catechumens and continue to grow through learning and practicing the faith under guidance. Then we have this usually at the beginning of Lent. Here they enter into a period of more immediate preparation for the sacraments. And then, if it works out like this, at Easter night, during the vigil, they receive the sacraments of baptism, confirmation, and the Holy Eucharist. They become Christians. These are the three sacraments that make us Christians. These are the sacraments which mark, if you like, the wedding. The baptism is the bath. Confirmation is the anointing, the making fragrant, perhaps, and the Eucharist is the supper of the Lamb. And so we are joined through these sacraments, that moment, to the Lord and to his people. Then, after that, there can be, we all need this in every walk of life, really, ongoing formation. We need to discover our own contribution, our own gift. St. Paul was talking about that in the second reading. The Spirit distributes many gifts. And so by God's grace, we make the journey towards holiness, towards our total belonging. And the mother of Jesus was there. The mother of Jesus, the motherhood of the church, which leads us to the good wine, leads us to the union with God, which is holiness. Now, next Sunday, and it's well advertised at the back there, but next Sunday begins this year's Alpha course. And the Alpha course is one of the tools that have been developed in recent years for that first stage. It's a way for people to begin the journey to becoming Christians and Catholics and saints. Somebody once said, well, what do we want? What do we really as Christians desire? Well, that all human beings become Christians and all Christians become Catholics and all Catholics become saints. You might say dream on, but it's still a wonderful aspiration to have. It's what we call first evangelization. That is what Alpha is serving. But it can also be a way for Catholics, those already Catholics, to reconnect to and rekindle their faith. Come to the wedding, says the book of Revelation. Come to the wine. So invite. May I give you then a little subject to think about this week, and perhaps something concretely to do. Just to think if there's anyone in your family, among your friends, among colleagues at work, who might be open to this, who might want to take the next stage. Invite them. Say, well, look, there's this thing going on at the cathedral. Why not come along? And I'm happy to come and hold your hand, as it were, for the first time, so it's not too scary. Maybe a lapsed person. Maybe invite yourself, even. There it is. There's a thought. But I just go back to that 90%. That was just in connection with the priesthood. That 90%. 90% of people who become priests because they were invited. But only 10% of priests did that. Well, transfer that to our Christianity. Transfer that to our Catholic faith. There's a story, somebody dies. One of these stories appears before St. Peter and appears before the Lord. And he or she says, well, here I am, Lord. And Jesus looks at him and says, where are the others? Where are the others? Who have you brought with you? Come to the wedding. Let us invite one another to follow the path of holiness.